Hi, I'm Samuel from Craftable PRO team, and in this video we will go through the advanced use of permissions in Craftable PRO. We have already covered how to manage permissions in Craftable PRO user interface, and now we will dig deeper to understand what permissions are generated by Craftable PRO, how to create your own permissions, and how to apply them in specific cases using Laravel Policies. Craftable PRO uses the SPA-T permissions package for permission and rules. This package allows us to define roles as well as specific permissions that can be attached to roles. You can restrict access based on specific permissions. While you can also restrict access based on roles, this approach is not recommended. You should always use permissions. Craftable PRO generates 4 types of permissions, one for each CRUD operation. So, in the case of training, these permissions are Craftable PRO Training Index, Craftable PRO Training Create, Craftable PRO Training Edit, and Craftable PRO Training Destroy. Note that these permissions are meant to be used in the admin panel only. Users are authorized against permissions in generated requests. For example, the edit action is authorized in the edit trainings request file like this. But let's imagine a situation where we want to allow trainers to access the admin panel. The trainer can delete or edit only their own trainings. How should we proceed? In this case, permissions alone are not enough. We also need to check if the current user is the author of the training. First, we need to add Craftable PRO user ID to the trainings table to record who the author of the training is. You might think, oh no, but we already have the CRUD generated. Luckily, Craftable PRO supports overriding already generated files. This is safe to use as long as you haven't made extensive changes to the generated files. Otherwise, it's better to edit the files manually. Let's focus on the scenario where it's safe to regenerate the files. We need to create a new migration to establish the relationship between trainings and Craftable PRO users. We need to complete the up and down methods in the migration file and then run the artisan migrate command. Now, we need to call the generate CRUD command where we define this new relationship. You are surely familiar with this process. Let's fill in all the questions as we did in the 5th lesson. I won't comment on the steps as we've already covered them. The only difference is that we need to add Craftable PRO user ID to the listing. Additionally, we need to specify form columns as we want to exclude Craftable PRO user ID from the form. This will be filled in the background based on the currently logged in Craftable PRO user. Finally, we need to define this new relationship. If we already have some trainings in the database, we must not forget to assign the Craftable PRO user to them manually in the database. Otherwise, an error will occur on the listing page because we would be attempting to retrieve the name of a non-existent Craftable PRO user. As you can see, the Craftable PRO user's name appears in our listing. I'm also using the command npm run Craftable PRO dev so that my assets are compiled automatically. Now we need to add functionality to attach the currently logged in Craftable PRO user to the training being created. We can create a getSanitized method in the store training request that will validate the request and add the ID of the currently logged in Craftable PRO user. And now we need to use it in our controller. Once everything is ready, we can test our implementation by creating a new training with dummy data. As you can see, the Craftable PRO user is automatically attached. We can also rename Craftable PRO user to author to make it clearer. We must not forget to rescan and publish translations to remove the prefix from the translatable string. After that, we should see the text author in the table header row. We need to create new permissions that will allow trainers to edit and delete their own trainings. The permissions will be called Craftable PRO Training Own Edit and Craftable PRO Training Own Destroy. So let's add the migration that will introduce these permissions. We can just copy the file that was automatically generated when we created the training CRUD. All we need to do is change the permission names. As I said, the newly added permissions will be called Craftable PRO Training Own Edit and Craftable PRO Training Own Destroy. This migration also automatically grants the permissions to the administrator role. We must run the migration command. Now we can check the admin panel to ensure everything went smoothly. The new permissions should appear in the Manage Permissions screen of our admin panel. They don't look very nice. Fortunately, we can translate the labels of these permissions in the Localization Manager. We need to rescan the translations, and then we can filter for only those related to permissions. Let's find our newly added permissions. Now we can change the labels to be more human-friendly. Let's check if the changes have been applied. As you can see, the permission labels are now in a much nicer, human-readable format. Now, let's apply these permissions to actually restrict access to the edit and delete actions for trainers who didn't create the trainings. As I mentioned earlier, the permission itself is not enough. We need to authorize the request against the user as well. For this, we need the help of Laravel Policies. If you are not familiar with policies, you can check the Laravel documentation. In short, policies are classes that organize authorization logic around a particular model or resource. The methods in policies automatically inject the current user, and you can pass a model into them. So let's create a policy using sailart make policy training policy. If you follow the conventions and your model is in app/models, Laravel will automatically resolve the policy and recognize that it belongs to the training model. We need to create methods for updating and deleting trainings. They should look something like this. In the edit method, we're checking if the currently logged in user has permission to edit their own training record. This is done by authorizing the Craftable PRO Training Own Edit permission and confirming that the user's ID matches the Craftable PRO user.id associated with the training. This ensures that only the user who created the training can update it. Similarly, in the destroy method, we're verifying whether the user has permission to delete their own training record. We authorize using the Craftable PRO Training Own Destroy permission and check that the user's ID corresponds with the Craftable PRO user ID of the training. After creating the policy, we need to apply it to the requests. We need to replace the permission in the guard with the name of the method from the policy and define the training to which we're applying the policy as the second parameter. This way, Laravel will automatically apply the rule defined in the policy. Note that we're modifying the guard in both the edit and update requests. The edit request is responsible for displaying the edit form, while the update request handles processing after you hit save on the form. However, both requests should fail if the Craftable PRO user does not have permission to edit the training. The last request we'll edit is the destroy request. The principle is the same as before. After implementing the new permissions and policies, we can finally test the newly added permissions. To make testing a bit easier, we will first allow new Craftable PRO users to be created without email verification. Let's check if I can still edit my own trainings. Yeah, everything works as expected. Now, we will create a new user, assign them the administrator role, and try to modify some trainings. As you can see, thanks to the changes in the config file, the user is automatically set as active. Now we'll try logging in as the newly created user. For this, we can use Craftable PRO's very handy feature, impersonal login. As you can see, if I try to open a training, not created by the currently logged in user, a 403 error is returned. Now, let's log back in as our original user and check what happens when we remove the permissions from the administrator role. Before the changes, I'm able to edit my own training. Now, let's remove the permissions. After attempting to edit our own training, we now see a 403 error. This means we're unable to edit our own training because we no longer have the necessary permission. Craftable PRO also includes a handy view directive, vcan, which can be applied to components. This allows you to hide components based on user permissions, for example, the edit or delete button. So we have covered the advanced use of roles and permissions, and in the next video we will dig deeper into translations, so see you then.